Hey, this is Pastor Dan, and today I'd like to read to you about Eric Liddell. He was an Olympic athlete and a missionary and a prisoner of war. And in all areas of his life, he really did live for the glory of God and to delight in Him. I think we can learn a lot about what it looks like to be an athlete, to be a competitor, and still love Jesus, and to think about what it means to give our life to Him and our calling. So, with that, let me read the first chapter, The Impossible Run. A spectator in the stadium at Stoke-on-Trent, that's a city in England, poked his neighbor in the ribs. He said, "Hey, look at that Scottish fellow shaking his hands with his rivals. Did you ever see such a thing?" Sure enough, Eric Liddell was going up and down the line of other runners from England, Scotland, and Ireland, and he was shaking their hands and saying, "Best wishes for your success." Then he took the place drawn for the quarter-mile race, the inside track, starting at the turn. The year was 1923, and Eric Liddell was a student at Edinburgh University studying science. But a friend, knowing Eric had been outstanding at sports and boarding school, talked him into trying out for the university's athletic events. Now, people were saying he had a good chance to participate in the Olympics in 1924. The starting pistol cracked, and Eric got a good start for about 3 strides. Then, suddenly, a runner named Gillies tripped and stumbled against Eric, pushing him into the grass and off the track. Sure that had been disqualified, Eric stopped, disappointment welling up in his throat. But emotion caught his eye. The officials were waving him on. He wasn't disqualified after all. A quick look at the track showed Eric that the runners were a good 20 yards ahead already. Still, almost without thinking, Eric leaped onto the track, his legs pumping furiously. "What's he think he's doing?" exclaimed the onlooker in the stands. "No one can make up such a distance." "Look how he runs," laughed the man's companion, head back, arms whipping around. "He looks like a swimming circus pony." It was true. Eric's running style did look awkward. His head was thrown back, his hands stabbed in the air, his knees pumped high like pistons in a car engine. But, to the spectator's surprise, Eric inched past several of the runners and was in 4th place as they turned into the home stretch. Gillies, the runner who had stumbled, had recovered quickly and was now in 1st place. It was obvious to everyone that Eric Liddell's stubborn run had pushed him to the verge of collapse. Still on he ran, gasping for breath, his legs pumping even higher, harder. In the last few seconds of the race, Eric passed the 3rd-place runner, then the 2nd-place man, and in a last heroic push, he surged past Gillies, and he won the race by 2 yards. Then people in the stands erupted like a loud volcano, cheers filling the stadium. After breaking the finish line, Eric fell to the ground, completely winded, his muscles shaking like jelly. A stretcher was called, and Eric was carted off the track to the thunderous cheers of the excited fans who had never seen such raw determination. He wouldn't give up. "How did you manage to win such an impossible race?" quizzed the newspaper reporter, and Eric managed a weak grin. "The first half I ran as fast as I could. The second half I ran faster with God's help." What do you think about Eric's running of the race? Even though it looked impossible to catch up. What do you think you would have done? Would you have just quit, or would you have gone after it? What if Eric hadn't won 1st place but came in 2nd or 3rd or 4th? What do you think of his race then? What if he didn't come back and win? Was it still worth it? What about you? Are you facing a task that you think's impossible? What do you think you could do with God's help? Well, chapter 2. I can't run. "Hey, Liddell," yelled one of Eric's Olympic teammates, "the schedule just arrived." The team representing Britain from Scotland, Ireland, England, and Wales had been eagerly waiting for the 1924 Olympics timetable to see what days and times their sporting events had been scheduled. July was just around the corner, and soon the team would be heading for Paris. "2 seconds, your time's up," Eric joked, grabbing the timetable. He eagerly ran his finger down each day's events, looking for the 100-meter race. That was his best event. Suddenly, the color drained out of his face, and he looked up at his teammates. "I can't run," he said quietly. "What? Can't run? What are you talking about?" "They've scheduled the first heats for the 100-meter on Sunday." "So what's the problem?" his friends asked. Eric took a deep breath. I don't run on Sundays. Sundays is for worshiping God, not sports, at least for me. His teammates just stared, but no one laughed at him. They respected Eric Liddell too much for that. Even the British officials, though dismayed by the news, quickly tried to get the schedule changed without any luck. When the news got out that Britain's highest hope for winning a gold medal in the 100-meter race for the first time ever was refusing to run, other people were not so kind. Why can't he run on Sunday? Just dedicate the race to God, some grumbled. He's a traitor to his country, that's what he is, others said darkly. What kind of man would refuse to run for Britain just because the chosen day doesn't suit him? Newspapers scolded him. People wondered why he was making such a fuss. But Eric Liddell wasn't making a fuss. He was just sticking to a commitment he'd made long ago, a promise to honor Sunday as the Lord's Day, a day of rest from work and sports. Still, Eric was part of Britain's Olympic team, so he began training for the 400-meter race, which was not scheduled for Sunday. Unfortunately, it was not his strongest event. When the team arrived in Paris, newspapers were still criticizing a decision not to run in the 100. On Saturday, Eric marched with his other British teammates dressed in their cream-colored pants, blue blazers, and white straw hats in the opening ceremonies. But on Sunday, when the qualifying heats were run, Eric was speaking at a Scots church in Paris about his commitment to Christ. On Thursday and Friday, Eric qualified in the initial races and the semifinal for the 400 meters, though his times were nothing special. Just before the race, a trainer who deeply respected Eric handed him a note that said, "In the old book, the Bible, it says, 'He that honors me, I will honor.' Wishing you the best of luck always." Eric shook hands with his rivals. He lined up on the track for the final race. The pistol cracked, and when the race was over, Eric Liddell had not only won the 400 meters, but he had set a new world record of 47.6 seconds. The crowd roared. No one had expected a 100-meter man to run such a race. Criticism turned to admiration. Britain and the world had a new hero and new respect for a man who lived by what he believed. What do you think about Eric Liddell's decision to not run on Sunday? I mean, in the Olympics, would you have made the same choice? Why or why not? Name someone you know who has integrity. Integrity is making choices that honor what you believe even when people misunderstand you. And maybe think about a time in what ways have you been faced with choices between what others expect of you and what you believe is right and true. See, even in that moment where he could have had all the glory, he was still willing to live and follow his convictions, what he believed that God wanted him to do. Well, there's a lot more about Eric Liddell. There's a movie about him called Chariots of Fire, and there's some good biographies about him if you'd like to hear more about him. But just wanted you to think about these things, and that's it. We'll see you next week or next time I read another book.